All right, so we're back. And that's interesting. You can see the shadow of my hair. That's pretty scary. Okay, so here we go. Now it's time to use some of the hatching techniques that we just learned. The difference being, once we start putting in value on the eggs, we're not just going to be using an angled hatch or cross hatch. We're going to start using, in places, and kind of depending on where we are, we're going to start using curved cross hatching, which is just like the curved cross contour if we were drawing a cylinder or something like that. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and lay the basic shapes in of the eggs. So now notice I am drawing from the shoulder, and that's necessary for getting smooth, flowy lines here. So nice, super light with these lines. I sharpened my pencil before I got into this one. Okay. At this point, I want to just take a little break, and I want to start thinking about the eggs. I'm going to move the camera around so that you can see the angle that I'm seeing. Wow, everything's kind of glary, isn't it? That doesn't work for craft. All right, can you see what's on the page? Barely. Oh man, I need a photographer. All right, we're gonna keep on going here. All right, well, trust me, one of the eggs, the axis that goes from, like, through the center of the egg looks kind of like this. And on the other egg, the axis is about like this. So there's slightly different angles. One of them, the pointy end is facing that one. This one, the pointy end is facing this way. So the different things that I need to pay attention to with an egg is making sure that it's round at the right places and making sure that it's symmetrical. The symmetry on the egg is a really important thing, because what can tend to happen is it can feel, and I think I've already started to, I'm in danger of this one flattening out a little bit too much here. So I want to make sure that as I come around on this, it doesn't flatten out. So it needs to take this okay, so like this. And this one. Now, one of the cool things, yeah, I guess you can sort of see what I'm doing here. One of the cool things that happens here, and I recommend that you do the same thing that I did here, which is have the eggs overlap. Because what happens is you can judge or measure the, oops, getting a little dark here. You can judge the size of the egg, and you can find the alignment where one egg passes there we go. It's a little more like the curve that I should see there. Gosh, sometimes you just, when you're drawing, sometimes I just have to remember to breathe. Just breathe. Okay, so I've got a few lines here. So now it's already time for the eraser. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the eraser gently here. If I had a clean, kneaded eraser, that's probably the best thing for this. And I'm just going to gently get rid of lines that are not not the line that I want to keep. So I'm going to get a little bit tighter here and try to grab this curve here. Okay. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either. Okay, that feels a little better. So now, I'm going to erase away the inside of this one. Okay, now this isn't looking too bad. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to map out the shadows. Can you still see? Yeah, okay. So the cast shadow underneath these eggs, it's a slightly different angle. So it's not symmetrical to the egg. The cast shadow kind of has its own kind of shape and path here. Let's see. It looks like it goes out like this. Now, once again, I've got an alignment. I can see where it meets the other egg. Right there. Okay. And now the other egg's cast shadow. By the way, the cast shadow is one of the more important things that makes this drawing rock or not. Now I've got my my paper here has a little bit of a bend in it, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if that's going to be something that's going to become distracting in the end for the viewer. So if I were going to draw the edge of the paper, I might have to draw a line like this, which I guess I am going to do that. I'm going to draw that line. And then what I could do later is I could bring in some, I have to be super careful with this because I want this to be, if I want that line to stay there, which you don't have to bring in something like that in your composition, but if you did, you'd have to be really careful about not making things sloppy down there and spending a lot of time there. So I'd have to spend a lot of time underneath here trying to make this as nuanced as what I'm going to do in here. So for the moment, I think I'm just going to somewhat get rid of it. It's already distracting me. Okay, I got one more shadow. No, I have two more shadows. There's a cast shadow that happens up here. So what's happening is, in this case, I have a couple lights shining, hitting this thing at the same time, hitting these eggs at the same time. So I've got one light that's coming from up there that's causing this shadow. I have a light that's shining from back here that's causing another shadow up in this zone like this. This one's a smaller shadow and it's pretty easy to map out that shape. That one's pretty easy. And then I've got one more shadow here, and this one intersects. So this one's kind of funny because it's going to overlap. I'll go ahead and start modeling or putting some value where that overlap is. So this one happens here. This shadow comes around like this. Okay, now I've got the basics laid in. Now it's time to go, well, it's time for me to squint. Squint, look at the still life, and say, and pick out where the darkest places are. So for the darkest places, one thing I know about working with pencil is I want to work in layers. So when I am laying in, value, I always think of the pencil. So I'm going to just go ahead and start here. Let's not keep talking. One thing about working with a pencil is I always think about the tone being laid in like veils of value. Now some of the darkest shadow in this case, now this one is what I've already talked about in terms of cast shadow. What my eyes are telling me, what I'm seeing doesn't quite make sense with some of the things that I've been taught about shadows. I'm seeing the darkest part of the shadow. No, I was wondering if you could see that. Heck, why not? Let's see if this helps. I'll try to get it from roughly my eye, but this part of the shadow right there is the darkest part that I see, and that happens to be right on the very edge of the shadow. So that's why I'm starting out here. Move this back again. Okay. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but these lines are, let's see, hatching here, it's a tiny bit sloppy. I'm trying to cover ground pretty quickly here. And so what's happening is I'm getting a lot of the white of the paper in between these lines. So I'm going to make another pass here. Now the beauty of working in pencil this way is I need to make another pass for the sake of just making the shadow a little bit darker anyway. So I'm going to angle back here to match the same angle as the first. You know, it's funny, I'm thinking about that this demo might be boring. And I'm thinking, well, would it be worse if we were in class and you were looking over my shoulder for 45 minutes? Or half an hour? I hope this isn't 45 minutes, but I don't know. And the answer is yes, because you can't scroll ahead in the video and see how everything ends. So, yeah, something like that. Okay, so what I was saying before is that what I see in real life is I actually see the edge of the shadow being a little bit crisper than I would normally expect. So, what I'm doing is I'm kind of making some kind of micro cross-hatching right around the edge of the shadow. Now I've got some lines left in there, so what I need to do is I need to kind of fill those, so I'm going to not forget about that cross-hatching direction. And I'm making this pass of cross-hatching just a little bit lighter, like, you've got to know, and I didn't say this when I was doing the hatching before, I'm putting so little pressure on this, it's barely touching the paper. So one of the keys to this technique is you have to you have to have a feather touch with this. And if you say, I'm not that kind of person, I always have a heavy touch, well, you're going to have to learn how to do it this way. So, and I know some of you like to just, dive in and get everything dark really fast and not have to worry about detail. And I am so sorry, but you're going to have to figure this out, and you're going to have to do it this way to be able to get a decent grade on this one. That's so mean, but I'm not lying. Okay, so the next thing that I see here, I'm going to kind of somewhat pick up the pace here. The next thing that I want to show here is there's a dark. I said this was the darkest thing that I could see, this edge of the shadow. By the way, sometimes if I'm dusting off crumbs like this, I'll use a cloth. What better cloth than a mask? Yeah. Because if you use your hand and the oil from your hand gets on there, you're going to wind up having smudge marks on your paper, and you don't want that. Okay. Do you all remember how at the beginning of the semester I was talking about how I hate pencils? Do you see why? Actually, the truth is, this kind of drawing, I actually really enjoy this. It's really pretty meditative. And I found that when you really can get this technique, it will give you a lot of confidence. I just think that drawing this way is just a necessary life skill. I'm going to pull this, I'm going to start to bring this curve up a little bit because that's where the egg goes. Okay. Now, at a certain point, I'm going to run into the other egg, so I'm going to go ahead and make a contour like this. Now, come back with the eraser, and this egg on this side is nice and bright white, so I want to keep it pretty clean. But what I can start doing, once I get to this intersection, now I'm noticing how there's some tone from the egg that's in the back that pushes right up against the white of the egg in the front. And I'll go to the, now I'm going to go, now I'm working on the egg in the back and building up the shadow tones that I see on the tip of the egg. So this is the narrow part of the egg, the front end. I wonder what part of the egg comes out of the chicken, the hen first. Is it the pointy part or is it the fat part? I have no idea. And I wonder if it's the same every time. I don't know. The things you think about when you're spending a lot of time with an egg. Okay, so starting to get this, move this up just a touch closer. That's a weird angle. Okay, now the technique that I want to use here. So this is one place where I've got a couple overlapping shadows. So I can use just some, well, I'm always thinking about planes on an object. And one thing that I notice here on this egg is that there is a faint shadow that runs almost in a line right down the center of the egg. It kind of goes like, I have to be careful where my pinky is. Sometimes when I'm drawing with a pencil, I'll either wear a glove in the hand that rests on the paper, or I'll just put a piece of cloth down underneath my hand if I'm going to be resting it on the page like this. So where are we? Yeah. So we're making this shadow. So what I'm drawing here, this is a core shadow where it's kind of like the intersection of the light from here and the light that's coming from the other angle. So it's a very light shadow, but it's still a core shadow. What happens is it gets darker as I move toward this part, toward the front of the egg. So I'm going to bear down just slightly more. And when I get down to this end, this is where the darkest part is. And now I want to locate the, I'm actually going to bring this down just a touch. Now I want to locate the contour, the actual contour of the egg that's in front. So what I can do is I can start to pull this out with an eraser, nice and clean, and then come back up. And every edge like this is defined by the negative space around it. So I can spend a little bit of time and work up the shadows that I see on the other side. And I can get pretty precise with this boundary here. Let's see here. Speaking of precise, feels a little lumpy to me. I need to take it in just a touch. There we go. I hope is my face in there? My gosh, I don't want my side of my face to be in here. Anyway, here we go. All right. So, brush off some of these crumbs, and we're getting close. So what I want to do is, just so that you see what a finished area looks like, I'm going to work on this little trifecta right here, and work on the shadow, the cast shadow that happens back here. And interestingly, even though this shadow back here is pretty dark, there's a gradation as I get closer to the egg in here. Oh, that's weird. Oh, my pencil's still pretty sharp. I started to get some weird lines in there. Fill those lines in. So what I'm doing, I'm not, you got to trust me that I'm not just looking at the paper. I'm looking at the shadow. I'm looking at the egg. I'm going back and forth because I'm not making any marks here that don't correspond to what I see out there. That would be stupid. So, and a little gradation in here, gets a little darker as I get to the edge of this shadow. Now, one of the things that's going to happen here, in the lightest area, is, I'm going to define the edge of the egg here. There we go. So I can go a little bit darker with the edge of the egg, like this, that contour. It's actually, as I look at the egg, it's rather dark on this whole edge here. And especially here, it's kind of a double shadow. But inside here, the shadow, the cast shadow on the paper gets lighter as it approaches this dark area, which helps to kind of define my face wasn't in there, I just remember that again. Which helps to define the edge of the egg. Now, what I actually see back here is there's a crease in the paper. So this could be a little confusing. I put the crease, I bent the paper to kind of try to keep the eggs from rolling around. I kind of stuck this in something that has a little divot in it. This could be interesting. I don't know. Again, if I keep this clean back here, I can use this as a compositional design element so that I have something else going on along with the eggs. Now, let me say, if you do everything right in here and you make this part of the drawing really tight, you don't need anything else. Like the focus of the drawing is going to be, what you've got here. So, bring it in. I'm getting a little tired, so I think I'm going to just say, like, this is the kind of finish that you want to have. When you get the technique right, and you're patient and you build the value up slowly, then you can get these drawings to start to look really photographic. How long does a drawing like this take? I think it's going to take a few hours. You've got to be patient with this. When you're when you're shading here, don't start making marks like that. It's going to ruin your drawing. So you have to breathe. You have to have some music going on. This has to be meditative, and I really do think that it's fun. I mean, I joke about how much I hate pencils, but the truth is, this kind of drawing, I really enjoy it. And the final product, when it's all done, can be so beautiful and so kind of luminous. Let me see if I can get those buggers out of there. Not really. Yep. That's what happens. You make a dark line in there and you're stuck with it. If I had a kneaded eraser, I could probably pull that out. Anyway, it's getting late. I hope you guys have fun with this drawing. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, I'll have the eggs outside my office if that's an issue for you. Oh, and I also have more Stonehenge outside my office. I have some flat sheets that don't have to be held down by 7 feet of tape. All right, take care, y'all.